You're listening to Quiero, Dinero, a personal finance podcast for the modern Latina. I'm your host, Janice Torres Rodriguez, and I'm here to help you be poderosa with your dinero. I'm an engineer, a blogger, and an entrepreneur that built a $50,000 side hustle, and I'm obsessed with all things personal finance. On this show, we're going to talk about how to make dinero, how to keep your dinero, and how to make it grow. Are you ready? Vámonos. Hola, mi gente. Welcome back to another episode of Yo Quiero Dinero, the podcast. This is your host, Janice, and today's episode is going to be about how to make a career pivot and reinvent yourself. We're going to be talking to Fabi Paolini, brand strategist and online business coach that helps entrepreneurs generate massive breakthroughs in their businesses through the power of intentional and disruptive brand positioning. These same principles allowed her to create a radical transformation in her business and go from a struggling entrepreneur to a thriving business owner with multiple six-figure annual income in a matter of 18 months. She's helped over 200 entrepreneurs build premium brands that attract with marketing strategies that convert. I can't wait to get into this episode with Fabi. But before we do that, I just want to remind you, the Side Hustle Summit 2 is happening October 26th to the 30th. If you were lucky enough to attend our free Side Hustle Summit back in April, you'll know that it was 5 days jam-packed with massive amounts of information from Latina entrepreneurs that are helping you take your side hustle to the next level. And we're going to do it all over again. So we're bringing you the sequel to the Side Hustle Summit, October 26th to the 30th. Tickets are available now. If you want to find out more, head over to our blog, yoquierodineropodcast.com. Now let's dive into today's episode. If you're a side hustler, a gig worker, or a full-on entrepreneur boss babe, you know that tax time sucks. But it's a necessary evil when it comes to owning your own business, so why not make it less stressful? That's why I love Keeper Tax. Keeper Tax automatically finds tax write-offs amongst your purchases for your business, and it helps people save over $1,200 in 10 minutes on average. First, they scan your past purchases for write-offs. It auto-monitors your purchases for write-offs you might have missed, and at tax time, you can file your taxes right through Keeper Tax or seamlessly export your savings. To find out more, check out keepertax.com/dinero. Fabi, welcome to the podcast. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you. Super excited to be here.
Absolutely. So I love your story. I feel like your story is just the classic immigrant story that
Totally.
I love. I'm just obsessed with these stories. You know, as someone who's Puerto Rican, I don't deal, and I'm very lucky that I don't deal with the immigration system in this country in a way that most other Latinos do. And so whenever I find somebody who has I think it takes an incredible amount of bravery to just even come here and start something new. I'm in awe of anybody who does that. And we're going to talk all about your personal story and what that looked like for you. But I just want to get started first off with you introducing yourself to the audience.
Yeah, well, I'm Fabi Paolini. I'm originally from Venezuela. I'm a brand strategy and online business coach, helping entrepreneurs position themselves as authorities online and building brands that attract and captivating their audience with marketing strategies. I'm a mom of 2 little girls. Hopefully they won't walk in. They might. It might happen, but I lock the door. And my husband is a singer. So yeah, that's kind of the short, very summed up story of who I am.
And we're going to dive into all of that. So I love talking to people who work in the brand strategy and business coaching space because there's a lot of people that are actually interested in creating their own brands and monetizing their skills. So I'm super excited to dive into that topic with you today.
Love it. Perfect. I can talk for hours about it. So I'm really excited.
Awesome. Okay. So I love starting off the conversation with asking this question to all of my guests because I feel like we, especially Latinos, we have a very unique relationship with money. It can be very negative or positive and just all over the spectrum. So I'm curious what your relationship was like with money growing up.
Well, I had a pretty healthy relationship with money in general. My dad used to work in an oil company, so we were, always good with money, but still with the typical money doesn't go on trees, little things that people, that parents say when we're growing up, at least my parents did.
Mm-hmm.
And we would travel and everything, but it wasn't like you can have whatever you want and buy whatever you want. So it was a healthy relationship. I feel like it was overall a healthy relationship that didn't become so healthy as I became an entrepreneur, which is strange, I think, because looking back, it doesn't seem logical that you would that relationship would change if it was good growing up, but it did a little bit, and I'll explain why later. But yes, in general, I feel like I had a pretty healthy relationship with money. There was no lack, there wasn't any excessive abundance, but we traveled and we went to restaurants, so it was pretty good.
Mm-hmm. And so, for anybody that doesn't know about the history of Venezuela, the oil industry was like the major export of Venezuela, and a big reason why the country had so much wealth at one point, right?
Exactly.
So the fact that your dad was in that industry, it makes sense that you had that level of stability because that's basically what was fueling the economy in the country.
Exactly. Well, and something interesting is that while my dad worked in an oil industry, but not actually the Venezuelan one. A lot of
Ah,
companies from like multinational companies come hire people in Venezuela because of the history. So he worked for a big multinational company and we moved around everywhere. I was actually born in Brazil and I've lived in Brazil, in Spain, in the US, in India, in Venezuela, obviously. So we moved around the whole world every 2 years until basically I reached the final years of high school. And then I came to study at Miami, in the University of Miami. And then I went back. So I moved around a lot.
that's very interesting. My husband actually has a cousin whose father worked for Exxon in Colombia, and they have the exact same story. They lived all over the place until he retired finally. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
All
That's
right.
how it was.
So yeah, that's awesome. So I want us to talk more about your career. What actually led you to leave Venezuela, come to the U.S., and how did you get to where you are today?
So it's an interesting story. I went to the University of Miami. I studied advertising and graphic design. I did like a double major and then I did a minor in what was it? A marketing. I was like, what was my marketing? Yeah, marketing. And then but after I graduated, my husband and I have been together since high school. So high school sweethearts. And he
Oh.
lived in Venezuela and I lived here in Miami. So after I graduated, I went back home or back to Venezuela and I started working in advertising. And my husband, like I said before, is a singer, he's a musician. And as he was building more success in his career, I started working a lot for him and his business, and a lot of musicians and a lot of artists at first. So that led me to eventually quit working in advertising because I was like, this doesn't make sense anymore. I'm making more money and have more freedom in my as a freelancer. So I
Mhm.
literally started working as a freelance graphic designer, working at the beginning mostly for musicians, for a lot of artists, or TV personalities or whatever, building their brands, their websites, kind of that part. And over time, I worked with more and more different types of businesses, but this was my focus. At some point, I did an MBA in Venezuela, but it was mostly for me. It wasn't because I wanted a job, but because I wanted to learn business even better.
Mhm.
So fast forward 2015, my husband was doing a lot of things in his career here in Miami, and I was pregnant with my first daughter. So we were like, okay, let's go to Miami, and you can do your thing here, and I'll have the baby in the U.S. because we want her to be American, obviously, right?
Mhm.
So this is kind of crazy, Janice, because literally I came with the intention of giving birth and coming back home, going back to Venezuela. So
Uh-huh.
that means that in Venezuela, I have an apartment with a baby nursery that has never been used.
Wow.
Literally, a closet full of clothes. I left as if I was coming back because I was going to go back. But I gave birth to my baby in September. And then, it was like, well, but December is coming around and we wanted to wait until she was at least 2 months old because we wanted her to have her shots or whatever. So anyways, we were like, well, let's just stay a few months more. And then it kept on moving. And then as the situation in Venezuela got worse and worse, we were like, okay, we need to stay. So, so my whole apartment, it's still funny to me to think that there's a crib that has never been touched
Oh
back then
my
in Venezuela. It's
gosh.
pretty crazy. So, anyways, so we were here, and I was like, okay, I need to start getting clients, and I need to start doing things because my business was 100% referral based in Venezuela. Plus,
Mm,
because there's currency control, it was all in bolivar. It's not in dollars. So obviously, I needed to get clients here because I couldn't survive off of the Venezuelan coin in the U.S. And my husband, who had been very successful and was building a very successful career as a singer, as the country went down, especially like 2017, his he had a lot of presentations and shows, and that's where we made most of our income. Obviously, that went down as the crisis in Venezuela got worse. So it more and more started depending on, okay, what can we do here, or what could I do? So I started looking at, I need to get clients. I need to get clients. I need to make money. I need to figure out. I'm going all into my story. Is this okay?
yeah, of course. Yes.
Okay. So I literally, what happened was at the time I was charging like $500 for building a website. And back then it was mostly literally just doing branding and like brand identity and web design. That was it.
Hmm.
So I did the math and I was like, okay, we need like about $5,000 to make to live in the US per month. And 10 clients per month at $500, that just seems like a lot of clients and a lot of work. So I'm
Yeah.
just going to raise my prices to 5,000. And then that way, all I have to do is get one client. Like that
Mm,
was literally my reasoning. So I started researching, obviously, because I knew, okay, I can't just stick a new price to it. I need to do more work and figure out how I can become better at this and how I can give more value to my clients. And that started shifting. And as I started learning and getting into digital marketing and doing all these things, I started teaching my clients. The more that I learned about online business, I started incorporating that. And the design piece eventually was kind of like, I mean, I still do it for my one on one clients, but that's not the main thing. So fast forward 4 years, I went from knowing nothing about digital marketing to building a business where we were generating a little bit over $500,000 a year. I've been featured in Forbes talking about digital marketing. I mean, it's super crazy how fast that went in just 4 years. So that's kind of
wow.
like the sum of it.
That is fantastic. Oh my gosh. And so the root of this whole situation is you basically being left with nothing and having to start over from scratch
Exactly.
after you decided that you can't go back to Venezuela.
Right. It was like, okay, we're here. Let me figure out a way to get clients.
Mm.
And I'm super intense and super determined. So I spent the first year, I did maybe like 15 courses, programs, coaching, like whatever. I invested a lot of money, but I'm an excessive action taker. So anything that somebody would tell me to do, I would be like, okay, I went all in. So that led me to get results pretty quickly too, and figure out the things that actually worked and the ones that didn't. But yes, it was literally, I need to make an income and I need to figure it out. So, and now my husband works for me, or it's our company, right? So now he's working. It started with me working in his part of the business, and now he's working in mine. So it's pretty interesting.
Wow. And so I want to dive into that a little bit because that's got to be kind of a shift in the dynamic of your relationship, right? And sometimes, I don't know, some guys don't feel comfortable with the woman becoming the breadwinner of the family. So what was that like for you guys?
Well, it's interesting because my husband and I, like I said before, have been together forever. So we have a very strong relationship.
Mhm.
And what happened is when I used to work for him, and I still work for him and his things, it never felt to me like I'm working for him. It felt like it was our business, right?
Mm,
And he kind of feels the same way with mine. So it has never been really an issue. It's more of me being nervous, like I hope he feels okay through it. But it really is, we're a team. We work together as a team. He helps me a lot with our girls. Now we have two little girls, so he takes care of the girls, and he's also working for me and letting me have my space and everything. But I think that if anything, our relationship has gotten stronger because of it. You know, but I know that it's strange it's I think that it's more strange on the outside than internally. So what I mean
yeah.
is, for us, this is very normal. We're a team. We see it as a team. Like it's our business. But from the outside, I feel like people might be, especially more traditional, you know, um, people looking in like, wait a minute, she's the one making the money, and so it's kind of weird on that side. You know what I mean?
I totally get it. And, the thing is that a lot of Latinas are actually getting higher levels of education at this point, and they're increasingly becoming the breadwinners or the primary breadwinners of their families. So there's literally a cultural shift happening with this generation. And you're right, like older generations are just like very stuck in their traditional ways. And they're like, oh, but how can you be okay with your husband making less money than you? And it's like, we're a partnership. Like if you're making money, I'm making
100%.
money. I don't care where it's coming from as long as it's being used to get us to where we want to be.
Yeah, and for us, it really is just perfect because I absolutely love what I do. Obviously, there's moments of stress
Yeah.
and moments where with anxiety or overwhelm or whatever. There's a lot of pressure when most of the income, or pretty much all of the income, is coming from me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or well, not all of it, but anyways, but it just works perfectly for us because I get to work in my business. He supports me with everything, like in the house, like anything related with our girls. He also works in my business, and he also has time to work on his music career and all the things that he does. So it's perfect for us. It's a perfect balance for our family, and like I wouldn't change it at all. So even if he could be like, okay, let me, and we discussed it at some point, like if he were to go get a job, and I'm like, I would rather have you here supporting
Mm-hmm.
me and being with the girls or whatever than you going out and getting a job. So this is what works best for us.
That's great. And I think that is one of the key things that is a key factor in having a successful business is really having a strong partnership at home and a support system. So that's
100%.
incredible.
I mean, I always say, like, you know, I say that my husband is my best coach. He's not a coach. He didn't study coaching or anything like that, but he knows whenever I'm having mindset issues, which is often because I'm human. um, he knows exactly what to say to kind of shake me up and get me going and motivate me and take care of me. And he brings me water, and he's like on top of everything, making sure that I'm feeling good and that everything is great. You know what I mean? So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, that's why I'm like, please don't ever leave my home.
That's
I need you
fantastic.
here. So yeah, but having that support is crucial because, again, I have two girls. One of them is in school, so it's not that bad. She's, well, the one that's almost turning 5, but we have an 18-month-old who is a menace to the household. And yeah, all of the tremenduras that the older one didn't do, she's doing. Like literally last week, we left her alone 5 minutes, and she took a marker. Fortunately, it wasn't a Sharpie. And all of my walls, my office, I can't even tell you. It was insane. My bathroom, it was just crazy. The whole
Oh
house
my
with a
God.
marker. It all came off, thank God. But you have to look at her all day long. So yeah,
Those are the challenges of entrepreneurship and motherhood right there.
exactly, for sure.
So, when you're in a situation where all of a sudden, your circumstances have changed, that can lead to a lot of like throwing everything at the wall and trying to figure out what sticks.
Mhm.
So, was the process for you like that with your business when you were first starting?
Yes. So very much so. And like I mentioned, I did like 15 courses and programs in the beginning because I was trying to figure it out fast. I had savings, and that kind of helped me. And I did get into debt in the beginning, which I know we're all against debt, but it definitely helped me at the moment. It's what I needed to be able to move forward. So anyways, I tried a lot of different things, and nothing worked. And then what ended up happening is that I kind of took a step back, and I said, okay, I had a successful business in Venezuela. Granted, it was all referral based, but it still was successful. And I had done an MBA and had all this knowledge, and I felt like what I was learning wasn't working. And what I realized is that most of the programs and coaches out there are all about teaching you marketing, which is great and it's awesome and it's necessary. But there's a missing ingredient that is fundamental for your marketing strategy to work. And what that is getting a lot of clarity on what your brand foundation is. So understanding your message as a brand, what makes you different. What I call it is uncovering your secret sauce and turning it into salsa, right? So it's
Mm.
literally like, how can I take the things that make me different and leverage those things to be able to captivate the right people? Because if I'm doing the same marketing strategy everybody is doing, and I'm saying the same thing that everybody is doing, I'm going to get lost in the crowd. And people tend to think there's an oversaturation, there's too many people, there's too many coaches, there's too many this and too many that. And I don't think that's true, because I always say, like, this isn't 1920, this is 2020. Your audience is 7 billion people. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
all over the world. It's a world of globalization. So the problem isn't oversaturation. The problem is that you don't know how to stand out. So there's always an audience, but you need to be able to discover how to communicate in a way that connects with them. So if you're only focusing on marketing and you're not really thinking about, who am I? What do I stand for? And what about me is different? And why do I want people to choose me? Then you're just going to get lost. So what happened with me is I was doing all these things and nothing was working. And there was just a moment where I was like, you know what? I'm tired of sounding like everybody else, and I just need to be Fabi. So the more, and I would exaggerate my personality almost. Like, it was like, okay, let me just be more Latina. Let me just bring out, and my audience is all American. Most of my clients are all over the US. And I would be like, you know what? Let me just be me. And I even have one of my ads right now, for example, is a TikTok video of me dancing salsa and literally using the, uncover your secret sauce and turn it into salsa. And the more that I brought that in, the more people would resonate and be like, oh my God, I love your energy and I love your style or whatever. So it was just really interesting how that shifted using the same marketing strategies that weren't working. Suddenly everything started connecting because people were connecting to me. So
Mm.
that's kind of where I realized. And part of the reason for this is that the world has shifted into what's being called an identity economy, where before people used to purchase, or let me put it this way, like before it used to be about like, okay, who's the most professional or the most educated? And because access to education wasn't as easy as it is today, right? If you had an MBA, automatically you were the best, right? You were the one
Mm-hmm.
that, okay, or a PhD or whatever. Today, where it's so much easier to get access to education, people don't necessarily make decisions on how prepared you are. People are making decisions on identity. So your personality and your story, and how your story reinforces who your audience believes they are, right? Like if I identify with who you are, I'm going to be more pro, I'm going to be more propense. What's the word? I don't know what the word is, but
Or
I'm more
invested
likely,
in what you're
exactly,
doing, right?
in hiring you because you represent who I am. So that's why bringing personality into your marketing, into the things that you're doing, makes such a big difference.
That is something that I have absolutely discovered and can confirm as I've built this podcast, because I approached it initially as like, I want to be like just spitting facts and like regurgitating all of the stuff that people like Susie Orman and Dave Ramsey and all these like super high profile people in the personal finance space have been saying. But I had to come back and realize, like, the reason why I started this podcast is because I didn't hear anybody like me talking about this
Mm-hmm.
in my experience and my unique situation. And once I started doing that, things have taken off in a way that I could not have even imagined.
Absolutely. It really makes a big difference. And one of the things that happened to me is that I have, till to this day, I have two Instagram accounts, right? My personal one and my business one. And which is Fabi Paolini, by the way. Just putting it out there.
Perfect.
And what happened is that, so I have the personal one private because since my husband is a public figure in Venezuela, I wanted to keep, my personal life a little bit more private. So, but I had a coach that I was working with who was a friend of mine. So she had me on both. And what she would say is, Fabi, when I see you doing stories in your personal account, and then I look at your other account, it just feels like they're two different people. Like it's completely a mismatch between these two women.
Hmm.
And you need to be the same everywhere. You just need to be, the more you that you are, the more you're going to connect. So what happened is that I was gonna do a live webinar, and this was in the beginning of 2018. And I had been using webinars for a long time as part of my marketing strategy, and I was doing a live webinar, and I was like, you know what? I'm just screw it. I'm going to be myself as much as I possibly can in this version. And this was like the Monday before I made the decision of kind of redoing the whole script and changing everything, changing the slides. I brought music into it and I laughed at myself. And I was like, I'm not going to care about if I say the perfect thing. I'm just going to be me. And it was insane the amount of results that I got from it. So it kind of just made me realize, okay, I just need to be myself more and show up as myself and talk like I talk. And because and again, it goes back to this kind of vision of what's professional, what we believe is professional. Oh, I have to act a certain way. I need to make sure that I'm saying the right thing. And what I realize and what I tell my clients today is that it doesn't even matter what you're saying sometimes. What matters is really your energy behind it, your personality, your style, because that's what people remember. They're not going to remember the words. They're going to just remember like, oh, I love listening to Fabi because she's just really cool, or that she's funny, or whatever. And that's what really matters. So that's what makes a
Absolutely.
difference. Yeah,
It's that authenticity. That's what people are craving nowadays.
exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the lessons that you've learned along the way in your entrepreneurship journey. Can you share some of those? Hola, mi gente. Let me tell you, when I was first thinking and dreaming up this podcast, I really had no idea where to even start. That is until I found the Anchor app. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it is legit the easiest way to make a podcast. And let me tell you why. First of all, it's free. And if it's free, it's for me because I do not have time or money to be spending on boberias that is not going to even accomplish what I'm trying to do. Anchor helps me with so many different aspects of my podcast. It's crazy that they're offering this for free. Mind boggling. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your teléfono, mija. You don't even need like a freaking expensive computer. But if you do have an expensive, beautiful computer, you can use that too. Anchor will help you distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and you can share it with your abuelitas and your primas without any freaking stress. I mean, doesn't that sound amazing? I know I love that feature more than anything because it's a one and done. Once your podcast is created, it's going to go out through the interwebs, into people's phones, into wherever podcast app they listen to, and they can find you right away. The best part, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. So you don't need to be stressing about finding podcast sponsors. Girl, they take care of that too. I mean, what are you waiting for? It's literally everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So if you're ready to launch your own podcast, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I can't wait to see the magic that you create.
Absolutely. So what I think is really important is, first of all, mindset is fundamental. And I didn't understand, and I had, to be honest with you, I feel like I was living in La La Land before in Venezuela. Like I was like not worried about a thing, and life was normal. And now that I think of it, probably a bit boring. Not completely, because since my husband was in the music industry, it was always fun and interesting, but at least on my end. So then I came here and all of this craziness happened, which is kind of going back to where we're talking at the beginning, where the kind of a little bit more negative relationship to money started, because now it was all dependent on me. So it was difficult. It was tough. So mindset became really important. And for me, mindset is about letting go of those fears that inevitably pop up, right? If we're worried about how much income we're going to make, or what's going to happen in 3 months or 4 months, or where am I going to get clients, or are they going to come in, or and these things are things that pop up even if they're not real. So for me, one of the most important lessons that I try to implement all the time is something that the way that I call it is going back to truth. Because I think that what happens is that our emotions and our story, like we create these stories in our brain about our lives, and we believe them. They're a reality. We're putting these movies that are real and these like drama stories of all these horrible things are happening. So what I mean when I say coming back to truth is like, okay, let me like remove the emotions. I have a friend that says, bring the data, not the drama, right? Like
Mm.
remove the drama for a minute and let's sit down and write the truth. What's the truth? What's happened in your business in the last year or the last 4 years? And where are you? And what's going on? And where are you going? And it's about staying focused, because it's so easy going down a rabbit hole and listening to these stories in your brain and being, oh my God, poor me, or being like this victim that is not real. So I think that mindset is fundamental. And before, I used to practice it more daily, in the sense of like I would journal every day and I would try to meditate every day. Now I've let go of the obsession, because I do think that it can become obsessed. Like you can become obsessive and it defeats the purpose. But what I do is I'm very mindful of the way that I feel. And if
Mm.
I feel like, oh, something is off today or something isn't right, and I can't necessarily pinpoint it. I try to face it head on and be like, okay, what is going on? Why
Mm-hmm.
am I, what's going on? How am I feeling? And I try to shift it as fast as I possibly can, whether it's through music or going outside or doing something that makes me shift my energy and stay back on track. Or even writing down, like going back to truth, like I said, writing down, okay, what's the truth? This. Okay, okay, good. Everything's good. So
Mm-hmm.
mindset for me is crucial for building success, for sure. I would say that that's probably the
Absolutely.
number one priority.
I would agree with you. I feel like entrepreneurship is a constant battle with imposter syndrome,
Yeah,
especially if you have never, had a business, or if you don't know anybody who's running a business. Like, it can just always feel like, who the hell am I to be telling people anything? Like, I don't
exactly.
know anything. Who am I to be asking for money? And it's just a constant battle that you have to have with yourself to believe that A, you do have the skills, B, you do deserve the money. And so you just gotta like face yourself and your fears all the time.
Absolutely. And the other thing, speaking of that, is making sure that you have a healthy relationship with money, which means getting uncomfortable as much as you possibly can with it. And what I mean is, in the past, especially in the first few years, I would completely ignore it. Like I became so obsessed with money. It was like a toxic relationship, right? Of
Mm,
like, okay, how much money am I making? And how much is coming in? And I would do math all day long, like all day long, thinking, okay, I have this client that's paying me this and that. Okay, how much do I have to make? And it was like this obsessive thing. But what I started doing is I started getting uncomfortable on purpose. So literally like opening my bank account often and looking at exactly how much money I made, not in my brain, but actually opening the bank account and looking at it, looking at if I had debt, how much debt do I have? And what is my plan to pay it off? And like just getting real with it, instead of having it be this big monster in your brain, but actually like, okay, let's get real here. And believe it or not, doing that has been so powerful for me, kind of like just normalizing money in every sense, and
hmm
and feeling okay with whatever is going on, and realizing that whatever, like it's just helped me generate more income, having that comfort and not being comfortable and getting comfortable with that uncomfort, and whatever, you got it. You got
Yes,
it.
absolutely. That is such an important point. I love that.
Exactly. So other lessons are, I think, realizing that we can't do it all alone, I think, is important as well. And I
Mm.
think that, we're so stubborn. And looking back, I've been so stubborn too, especially at the beginning of like, oh,
Listen, Latinas are the worst
oh
at
my
asking for
God.
help. Like, you already
Absolutely.
know.
Absolutely. And I mean, even if as I invested in my business and did things, because I'm not afraid of investing, especially if I feel like, okay, I'm doing an investment, but I know that this investment is going to make me money. Like, of course, you know what I mean?
hmm
But not real, like trying to do everything on my own. It has been a good thing on one hand, but on the other hand, I think that it would have been faster. It would have, if instead of doing a course, I would have actually hired somebody, for example, to come in and
Mm.
say, you have to fix this, and that. Boom, that's it. So looking for help and looking for somebody that can help you do these things, I think is really, really important. And I would really recommend that too.
Oh my gosh. I am literally the person that you're talking to that needs to do more of that. And I started doing that for the first time after owning a business for like 7 years by hiring an assistant, because I just got to the point where I'm like, I cannot function. Like, I cannot do anything else. I have too much going on. And there's like this sense of like losing control when you hire people to do things
For
that I
sure.
think especially like type A people just can't handle. But I mean, it has been the best thing for me, for my well-being, for my work-life balance. It's just, it's okay to ask for help.
Exactly. Well, I'm good at asking for help at certain things right now. There's other things where I'm not good at all.
Yeah.
A part of delegation, and I want to delegate, but I still have a hard time with it. But I do realize, for example, that I can't be the bottleneck for my business. And
Yes.
if I'm doing it all, I won't I won't keep on growing. So literally I'm right now in a moment where I'm hiring a team and getting a whole bunch of people here to support me in different ways, because I realize like I need more time to be creative and to
Mm,
be sticking with my zone of genius. So what I had a coach who, one of the things that they made us do is like write down everything that you do every single day and put a price tag to it. Like, is it a
ah,
$10 task? Is it $100 task? Is it $1,000 task? And basically anything under 1,000 are things that you have to delegate. That's
I
basically how I think
love
about
that advice. That's fantastic.
it. I love it too. So yeah.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the grind culture. You
Hmm.
know, that is something that I think is very uniquely American, because I travel all over the world and I just feel like, yo, Americans like don't know how to relax. Like, why are we like
Oh,
this?
for sure.
So I'm curious what your relationship was like with the grind culture. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, it's changed over time. For
Okay.
sure, in the first couple of years, since living in the US, it was all hustle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I was very much in survival mode because I was brand new. I had just come in. I had this baby. Venezuela was like burning down, and we needed to figure out something to do. So it was like all work all the time. And I was the person who would like get like lock myself in the bathroom or in the closet to read my emails during the weekend and not sign out of Facebook for me is 100% work related.
Yeah.
Like that's what I do on Facebook. So I spend all day on Facebook, and I would be like, oh, checking things and nonstop. And over time I realized that it was leading me to burnout, and
Mm,
I needed to listen to myself. And what I've learned as well is that the more relaxed I am, the more money I make. Like if I'm obsessing about my business, you can bet that that's affected in my bank account. Like it's going to be negative,
mm-hmm.
or more negative than usual. So anyways, so how I've changed it is that I've kind of made it a rule of at the end of the day, sign out of my email, sign out of Facebook. Definitely over the weekends, I don't work at all, and I'm pretty good at completely relaxing during the weekend. But during the week, I definitely work hard. I get up late. I don't get up super early, and I can have a little bit more control of my schedule. But I really just love working. I'm like a
Mm-hmm.
workaholic. I just love what I do. So I try to stop working earlier ish. I try to start
Yeah.
working at 4 or 5, but it depends on the day. There's days when I might be working at 6 or 7. Um, so yeah, there's kind of a balance there. But fortunately, I feel like since I work from home and I have my daughters walk in all the time, and it's at least I feel like there's a little bit of balance. So
Mm-hmm.
it is tough sometimes though to turn your work brain off. Like sometimes it's like 11 o'clock at night and I'm turning around to my husband and be like, hey, you know what? We should do this or we should try that. And he's always the person that gets me in check. Like, Fabi, it's 11. Come on. We'll talk about this tomorrow. Drop it.
Yeah.
So it's a process, but in terms of like the crazy grind of like being on all the time and I have to do everything to get clients and all that stuff. Fortunately, I'm not in that phase anymore because I have everything so automated. I generate leads every single day. People come into my business and book sales calls with us literally every single day, and it's all automated, and I'm not the one that taking sales calls. I have a team that does that, so I don't have to be on social media posting or anything. Like, in fact, like I haven't posted on Instagram in like a month or something like that. So I'm not the best at that, but I am good at generating leads anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
that's good.
I love that. So, for somebody who has so much on their plate, it's important to balance your life and your work. And so, I'm curious, what kind of self care practices have you put into place to keep you in a good space so that you can take your business to the next level?
So there's a few things that I do. Working out for sure it's a medicine for me. I feel like it's literally I'm taking a pill
Mm-hmm.
because if I'm stressed out or I'm tired or whatever, it just relaxes me immediately. And I used to work out early in the morning, but now what I do is I work after I finish my work day. And the reason why that helps me is that it helps me shut my work brain off a little bit. So um I work out every single day, and that is super super helpful. Another thing that I do is like I have my guilty pleasures. And one of them is listening to the Paris Hilton podcast, so like
Oh, wow.
getting into gossip stuff, and it's super dumb and basic, but it's so relaxing to not have to think about anything for a minute. So it's
Yes.
kind of funny and random, but yeah, that's one of the things I do. Like I listen to his podcast, and I listen to another comedy one. So I like to listen to and I follow a lot of podcasts, but I try to only listen to ones that really literally make me break my brain completely from work. I
Yeah.
do love listening to work related ones as well. But anyways, so doing that, and then I just literally relax a lot on the weekend. Like I think I probably spend usually all Saturday in my pajamas at home with my girls and just playing and listening to music and relaxing. So that's what I would say is my self-care.
That's great. I love that. So I definitely indulge in like trash reality TV. That is my
Sure.
self-care for sure.
But I don't watch that much TV. I mean,
Okay.
usually we watch at night right before we go to sleep and like binge watch Netflix stuff or whatever.
Yes.
But that's pretty much it. I don't watch that much. I don't have time for it.
Yeah, no, it doesn't sound like you do, so I totally get it.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm curious, what are some struggles that you faced as specifically as a woman of color or Latina in your entrepreneurship journey?
Well, I think that I don't think that it's more so as being a Latina. It's about just learning the language of building an online business, right? It's like a
Mm,
whole culture. That at first there's always going to be a learning curve, right? So at first I needed to figure out what this world was going to be like, or how, because again, I had a business back in Venezuela, but it wasn't really online. I mean, I used to build websites for people, but they were pretty websites, not really websites that were set up for conversion. I didn't know anything about that. So, when I came here and I had to learn this whole language and world and all of this, it was just very new to me. Getting used to people talking about money openly, for example, and me learning to do it. And it was like there was just a lot of change. And I think that for sure is something that affected me. But I think that fortunately, at least in my own personal experience, being a Latina has actually helped me in my
mm,
business because of what I was saying before, right? Like I bring my personality so much into what I do. And it's not that I'm bilingual in my messaging or anything like that, but I have some sort of accent, at least a little bit. And
I don't hear it.
although I always kid around like, what are you talking about? I don't have an accent, but obviously I do. So I try to bring a lot of that personality. And what that does is that it helps me attract really amazing people too. So
Yeah,
I have a very diverse audience. My clients are super diverse and super interesting. And, so yeah, I think that if anything has actually helped me, I don't think that it has hindered me or held me back being a Latina. So I'm very
that's
fortunate in that
fantastic.
part. Yeah, for sure.
So I think one of the things that a lot of us tend to face is like this feeling of being worthy of financial independence or success. So have you ever dealt with that personally?
Yeah, for sure. So in that sense, what happened is that at first, you know, everything up until when we moved here was my husband was in the spotlight, right? And the way that I grew up, and most of us, I think, and I don't even think only as Latinas, I think that this is a very much a global thing in general, at least.
For women.
It's women are the moms and the wives and the ones that take care of the home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even when I had women like in my family or parents, friends that worked, it was always like the man is a superstar. It's all about his business or his career, and hers is like this afterthought, like, oh yeah,
Mm,
he works so that she can support a little bit. But it was never about the woman. So when we came here and I literally felt like the spotlight changed. And from being all about my husband and his career, it was like, okay, Fabi, you're up.
Yeah.
And it was like, what? Me? Are you sure? Are you sure this is right? And then starting to generate income, at first, there was definitely a mental game of me like, okay, is this okay? Can I charge more? And I moved up pretty quickly in raising my prices and going through that. But it was for sure an internal process of like, what? Like, I'm making this amount of money. Is this what? Like, it was just really, and it's funny because my husband didn't have an issue with it. He was like, wow, amazing. Keep on raising your prices and keep on bringing more. But for me, it was like, is this okay? Like, is it
Mm-hmm.
okay that I'm making this amount of money? Or is it like, it was just a really weird place to be in. But, again, as I got more of a healthy relationship with money, and the more that I understood my worth and the more that I saw clients getting results, and all of that helps build your confidence. So I heard somewhere
Absolutely.
that at first it takes courage, right, for you to do things. And then eventually that courage transforms into confidence. So
Yes, I love that.
yeah, for sure.
All right. So, what advice would you give to someone who wants to start a business but doesn't know where to start?
So I would say the first thing is starting with themselves. And what I mean with that is looking at the things that you already know. Like what is your experience? What are your skills? What are the things that you love to do? And it doesn't mean that you need to have a diploma on the wall for it. It doesn't mean that you have to be like have 25 years of experience in it. I've had clients who are literally just starting out and who will go on to be very successful. I think that one of the most incredible success stories I have from one of my clients is this client who is a poet. And she worked as a poet, teaching in universities and doing all these things. But she had done so much personal development for her own self, because she had been through abuse as a young kid and done all these things that happened in her life. And she had been through a lot of therapy, that she was like, I need to build a business helping women. And specifically, she works with Black women, heal their own trauma. So basically it's okay, how can we bring together poetry and this background that you have in this area with healing? And literally that's what she built a coaching business where it was about healing through poetry and through words and all these different therapies and things. And that's what she did. And she was once she launched her business, she was able to make $30,000 in 1 month. It was insane. So
Wow.
it really begins with you understanding, like I say, your secret sauce and turning into salsa, right? Like using those things that what is my strength? It doesn't matter if you formally studied it or not, but if you have an experience of transformation that you went through, that you know a lot about personally, and you could teach other people how to do the same, this is where you begin. Understanding you, your language, your personality, your style, what you want to bring forward. And then what I usually recommend people is, the majority of people say, go out, validate your idea, survey your audience, ask people how much you should price it, and then you build a program or an offer for them. And I'm always like, are you crazy? You're going to ask people how much to charge? Like, everybody's going to say $1. No. And then, so instead, what you want to do is you're going to start with you. What do I know how to do? What am I great at? And then you're going to look for the audience that has the problem that you can solve. So it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the other way around. And then you're going to get to understand that problem even deeper. So you're starting with you, then you're looking at them, and then you're going to build an offer that brings together the two things, if that makes sense. So it's not about, let me validate my idea. Again, globalized world. There is going to be an audience, unless you're selling like how to build a rocket to the moon, which I'm sure there's an audience for that too, but it must be a little bit more limited. But mostly, if you're offering a service, there is going to be an audience somewhere in the world that needs what you're selling. So it's okay, let me start with me, what I can do. Let me look for the audience that has that need. Let me understand and meet that audience and really go deep into the problem that they have, so that I can learn how to communicate and build my offer in a way that really is more like it's more tailored to them, but based off of me, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Such good advice. And if
Exactly.
you are interested in building a rocket to the moon, you should probably go and apply for work at Tesla.
Exactly. If that's your thing, go for it.
All right. So I'm curious, what is your money mantra? Could you share it with us?
Yeah, actually, I have one and I have it behind me. Unfortunately, you can't see it, but it's proceed as if success is inevitable.
Ah, I
Like,
love that.
success is inevitable. Success is inevitable. And money always flows to me is another one. But usually it's success is inevitable. That's my money mantra. Like it's done. It's mine. It's here.
Well, it's true though. Like if you just have a clear goal and you just continue to focus on it, at some point you will be successful. I truly do believe that.
Oh,
It's just a matter of time.
I think that like the secret to success is not quitting until you're successful. Period. Like
Yes.
that's it. And I always use the story of my own webinar. Like I told you a moment ago. It took me 11 versions of me doing a webinar over 2 years before I got results from it. So
Mhm.
if I would have quit on version number 3, I would like,
Yeah.
I don't know where I would be, because after the 11 versions, I've made over $1 million in my business. So
Hello.
yeah, but it was I warned you, I'm extremely determined, right?
Mhm.
My determination and being like, no, I feel like there's something here. And I want to, I know that I will get it right. And I'll tweak as many times as I need to tweak, and I'll do it again, and I'll do it again, and I'll do it again until I got it to work. So yeah, it's really about staying focused and being like, I'm just going to make this work, period.
That's it. There is no option to fail. You have to
Exactly.
decide that up front.
Exactly. Absolutely. So, yeah,
I
that's,
love that so much. Okay, so is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you'd like to share?
um, yeah, there's something that I would like to share that I think is important, and it's related to charging what you're worth.
Mm,
And this is probably one of the topics that I talk about with my clients the most. And it's interesting because I've launched my programs in Spanish and in English, and most of my clients are English speaking, but I've had a few clients that are Latinos. And what I've noticed is that this is the place where people like Latinos struggle with the most.
yes.
100%. Like when people go through my program in Spanish, the number one thing that they're like, oh my God, I can't believe it, is learning how to charge their worth. And, I think that what changes that is you understanding your value. And one of the things that I love showing to people all the time is if you go to tiffany's.com, the jewelry store, you can buy literally a paperclip, like a 2.5-inch paperclip. Google it if you guys don't believe me, for $1,500,
Oh
a
my God.
paperclip. So I'm always like, if there's somebody out there buying a $1,500 paperclip and you here are changing, like offering financing advice or coaching to help people, generate more income or transform their health or their careers, and you're afraid to charge $1,000, you're an idiot.
Mm,
Like you need to understand the value that you're delivering. It's not about how many followers you have. It's not about how much experience you have or whether you're a celebrity or an influencer. Like that's not what people care about. What's important is the value of the result that you deliver. What is the value of the result worth, right? And if what you're doing is something that is really powerful and you're helping people, you need to charge for it whatever you're worth, like whatever it's worth. Because there again, going back to what I've said a few times today, we live in a globalized economy and in the globalized world, which means that there is somebody out there that's willing to pay you what you deserve. If somebody's paying $1,500 for a paper clip, they're going to pay $1,500 for whatever you're selling. And I'm saying $1,500 is a low range. Usually when I work with my clients, I basically almost force them to charge at least $5,000 for their services. I don't force them, but yeah, I push them to try to charge more, because when you're offering something of value, you need to charge accordingly to that. So I think that that's really important. And it was a process for me, for sure, raising my prices and
absolutely.
owning my worth. But usually what I recommend around that is listening to your gut and following your gut, even if it feels counterintuitive. So I told you that I raised my prices from 500 to 5,000, and I charged 5,000 for probably like a year and a half. And then a year and a half in, there's so much work involved when I do one-on-one work with my clients. Like I go super, super in with the work that I do. And there was a moment that I felt like I'm just screwing myself over. And this isn't fair for me, especially with clients that are making $30,000, $50,000 a month, and I'm charging 5,000. Like it just doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
So there was something internally that said to me like, Fabi, you need to charge more. And I was like, I'm changing my price to 10. And I had a coach at the time who was like, no, but you need to start at 7,000 and little by little raise it. And I was like, I'm sorry, but no, I need to charge 10,000, period. So what happened is that I changed my prices on my website. And that same day I had somebody that booked a call with me. And at the time I was the one that was doing sales calls. So I had literally just raised my prices and I had this call with this woman on Zoom that day. And I was internally dying. I was like, oh my God, I have to tell her that's 10,000. She already saw it and I can't bring it down. And when the moment came of me saying how much my price was, her answer was like, really, that low?
Oh
I
my
thought that it was
gosh.
more because it seems like from what you're offering, you should be charging more than that. So she became
It's
my first
amazing.
10K client the same day I raised my prices. And what happened was so interesting. I got so many clients coming in when I raised my prices to 10K. Within 3 months, I had already raised it again. And I've been raising it consistently since then because, again, tied to the results that my clients get, it just makes sense. So um, you have to listen to your gut around it because I think that ironically, or I really believe that if I would have raised my prices to 7K like the coach told me, I would have not gotten clients because there would have been an internal resistance on my end, like this is still not fair. And
Mm-hmm.
if it's still not fair, and I'm all about energy, so I'm like, if it's not fair for me, I'm going to have resistance against around selling it. So I won't sell it. It needs to feel like the right thing, even if it doesn't make sense to others. So that's my belief around
Absolutely.
price. Yeah.
That makes so much sense in my head, and I feel like you need to just go back and think about how much value you place on anything when you pay more money for it. That's like, it just makes
Absolutely.
so much sense. You're like willing to pay, $500,000 for a house in a nicer neighborhood because you value that.
Exactly.
You think that a
Well,
BMW is worth more than a Toyota because of what you pay for it. Why
exactly.
wouldn't you treat your business the same way?
Absolutely. And there's a saying that is like, those who pay attention. And
Yes.
literally, I can't even tell you, like, what's happened since I've raised my prices is that my clients get more results. Because if you're like, I'm investing 5 figures into my business, you can bet I'm going to do everything this woman tells me to do. And
Right.
there was this friend of mine who has a program that's $100,000. And he would tell me, like, Fabi, just the fact that somebody would hire me, even if I gave them nothing, right? I didn't like, even if I have not given them anything with what they're doing. But the fact that you're investing $100,000 in yourself is enough for you to get results because of the level of belief that you're investing into yourself so much that you're getting these results. So, I mean, I don't charge $100,000 yet, not yet,
Yet.
but no, I'm just kidding. But what happens and what I see with my clients is that it just changes the level of commitment. Like if I'm investing, and it's with everything, right? Like if you're building a brick and mortar business, there's investments that you have to make. You have to buy inventory. You have to buy the furniture. There's all employees, all these different things. Building a business takes investing, but why wouldn't you invest if it's somebody who's going to get you results? Like the client that I was telling you a moment ago, who's a poet. Yes, she invested with me, but if she's making $30,000 a month, that's like the most obvious and simple investment that you're going to make in the world because it's going to keep on giving you money. So that's my view on investing. And especially with it when it's higher ticket, what happens is that people take action. They're like, I'm
Yes.
committed. And even with me, anytime I've invested higher ticket, it's like, whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to do it.
I'm
I'm going to
getting
do it because
every
I'm going to
drop
make my
out of
money back.
this.
Yeah, for sure. So
Yeah. Well,
absolutely.
I love your story, Fabi. And so I want people to be able to find out more about you and follow your journey. So where's the best place we can do that?
So you can find me everywhere as Fabi Paolini. And you can also go to my website, fabipaolini.com/go. And I have a video training that walks you through exactly what you need to do to uncover your secret sauce and turn it into salsa and charge high ticket for your online business. And it's like an 18-minute video. It's so good. I just re-recorded it this week. I promise you guys are going to be blown away. So you can get that for free and just Fabi Paolini everywhere. So
Awesome. This has been an amazing conversation. You are such an inspiring mujer, and I cannot wait for people to hear this conversation. And if you have been on the fence about starting a business, you need to start listening to what this amazing woman is telling you, because she's made it happen for herself. And I have to agree with everything that you say, because I have experienced this same journey as an entrepreneur, and I can definitely testify that you know what you're talking about.
Exactly. Thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and I hope that this is helpful for you guys. And I would say just take a chance on yourself, especially if you have this little fire in your heart that's telling you that you need to go after more. Do it.
I love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I really love Fabi's story, and I hope you did too. I think it's really easy to get caught up in the anxiety and the fear that's associated with trying to do something new or reinvent yourself or make a pivot, whether it's an intentional decision or something that's kind of thrust upon you by life, right? And so I think it's super important that Fabi talks about how she really just had to rely on her gut, rely on her skills. She had to figure out what it was that she wanted to do in a way that felt authentic to who she was as a person, and she was able to leverage skills that she had already built up over the years of her career to really create and transform her life in a way that now she can take care of not only herself, but her entire family. So I hope that this episode definitely resonates with you, and I hope that it inspires you to do the scary shit, because the scary shit, more often than not, is what gets you to the next level. As a reminder, if you're loving the Yo Quiero Dinero podcast, please make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share. That way, amazing listeners like you can find us too. We want everybody out here being poderosa with their money. And so if they know about us, they can start doing that too. If you don't already follow us on social media, make sure that you follow the Yo Quiero Dinero podcast on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, and even TikTok. Yep, we're doing TikToks too. And don't forget to visit the Yo Quiero Dinero podcast blog, where you can find episode show notes, as well as personal finance articles, news about events, and more. Until next time, guys, stay creative, stay brave, and stay poderosa. On the Yo Quiero Dinero podcast and associated entities, all information provided is for general information purposes only and does not constitute accounting, legal, tax, or other professional advice. Listeners should not act upon the content or information found here without first seeking appropriate advice from an accountant, financial planner, lawyer, or other professional. We assume no responsibility for information contained on this podcast and associated entities and disclaim all liability with respect to such information, including but not limited to any liability for errors, inaccuracies, omissions, or misleading or defamatory statements. Usage of this podcast and associated content constitutes an explicit understanding and acceptance of the terms of this disclaimer.